This is Euronews Now. I'm Helena Humphrey, and here are your top stories. The UN calls for a security zone to be set up around the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in Ukraine to prevent a disaster. It's been the site of constant shelling, with both sides blaming each other. Russian President Vladimir Putin lashes out at economic sanctions imposed on his country by the West, saying they're wrecking the quality of life for Europeans. And Britain's new Prime Minister Liz Truss has formed the most diverse cabinet in UK history, without a single white man holding the country's four most important ministerial positions.
The head of the UN has backed calls by its atomic watchdog for a safety zone to be established around Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Antonio Guterres made the announcement at an emergency meeting of the Security Council, called by Russia to discuss the IAEA report.
Russian and Ukrainian forces must commit not to engage in any military activity towards the plant site or from the plant site. Zaporizhzhia facility and its surroundings must not be a target or a platform for military operations. As a second step, an agreement on a demilitarized perimeter should be secured.
Both Russia and Ukraine are blaming each other for recent shelling of the plant and the ongoing threat to it.
We regret that in your report on implementing safeguards in Ukraine since April to September of this year, which appeared literally a couple of hours ago, the source of shelling is not directly named.
While we controlled the station, there was no threat of radiation disaster. As soon as Russia came, the worst-case scenario immediately became possible.
Nuclear inspectors last week visited the Russian-occupied plant. Shelling continued while they were there. The IAEA head warned of a very real risk of nuclear disaster. Although the agency was careful not to blame either side, it said there was an urgent need for interim measures to prevent a nuclear accident caused by military action. And all relevant parties need to agree on a protection zone to avoid further damage.
Vladimir Putin has lashed out at the West over sanctions imposed on his country after its invasion of Ukraine. The Kremlin's war has been condemned by most of the international community, but some, including China, have refused to criticize it. The Russian president was speaking at the Eastern Economic Forum in Vladivostok. In place of the pandemic came other challenges, also of a global nature, with threats to the entire world. I mean the sanctions fever of the West and its aggressive attempts to force modes of behavior onto other nations, to strip them of sovereignty and to subdue to its own will. Many Western-based multinationals and retailers have pulled out of Russia in line with the sanctions, reversing a trend of decades of investment. The full impact of these measures has yet to become clear. A recent decision by G7 Western powers to cap oil prices has provoked an angry response from Moscow, which depends heavily on oil revenues. Moscow's decision to shut down the Nord Stream 1 pipeline that provides Europe with much of its gas supplies is seen in the West as a direct reprisal, the latest salvo in an evolving economic conflict.
Russian President Vladimir Putin on Tuesday attended sweeping war games with China in his country's far east, in a show of military muscle amid the tensions with the West over Moscow's action in Ukraine. According to the Kremlin, over 50,000 soldiers will be involved in the drills, using 140 aircrafts and 60 ships. Participating countries also include several of Russia's neighbours, including Syria and India. The week-long exercises are largely intended to display growing defence ties between Russia and China. Putin's presence at the war games signifies the importance the Kremlin is placing on this relationship building with participating nations. For China's part, Beijing has refused to criticise the Kremlin's actions in Ukraine and has accused the West of provoking Moscow. India has also refrained from imposing sanctions.
up against an energy price catastrophe, the Lithuanian government will present a package of financial support, which they say will be among the largest in the EU, measured by the share of GDP.
We're speaking about the sums of near or above €1 billion, and this is related just to the price of energy resources. Income support measures will of course also be foreseen in the budget.
The measures equate to around 2% of Lithuania's economy and will cap electricity and gas prices while providing support to businesses. The plan also includes a variety of energy-saving measures, such as setting heating limits for public buildings at 19 degrees and air conditioning to 27 degrees, as well as mandating remote work on Fridays and Mondays. Investment into green energy will be encouraged. Meanwhile, in France, some sports facilities such as swimming pools and ice rinks are already being closed. One countrywide pool operator saw their energy costs hit €100 million, up from just 15 million. Transport could be hit too. Fewer trains are reportedly being considered this winter as a way to save energy, meaning those that do run will be very busy. And local mayors are researching whether they can turn off street lights after midnight without compromising safety.
Portugal is the latest EU member state to announce measures to support families as inflation hits a 30-year high. And Prime Minister Antonio Costa did not hesitate to reveal how much this will cost the state coffers.
Thanks to responsible budget management, we can safely adopt this new set of measures. That this year alone will have an additional cost of €2.4 billion exclusively dedicated to families.
For Costa, helping struggling families is important, but he insists it must be done responsibly.
What is essential is that we manage to combine measures that in the short term help families to maintain their purchasing power, but do not feed the spiral of inflation, which we increase prices today and then they increase tomorrow. And we lose tomorrow what we increase today.
The measures include €125 to each citizen with an income under €2,700 per month, plus €50 for each child in the family, while pensioners will receive an extra 50% top-up. In 2022, the national minimum wage remained fixed at €822 per month, or just under €10,000 per year, one of the lowest in the bloc.
Sweet celebrations, but the UK's new Prime Minister has a daunting to-do list topped by soaring energy bills and a fast-approaching economic recession. To help her, she needs her own top team. So Liz Truss spent her first few hours in number 10 sacking some of the old cabinet and creating her own. The appointments came fast and furious, but with an emerging theme. A predominance of those who backed her for the premiership, but it was also noticeably diverse. Heading the list, a new Chancellor or Finance Minister, Kwasi Kwarteng. Suella Braverman becomes the new Home Secretary, replacing Priti Patel. And Therese Coffey gets the health portfolio and becomes Deputy Prime Minister, making the Truss and Coffey top duo the first all-female one in history. James Cleverly becomes Foreign Secretary, replacing Truss herself, while Ben Wallace broke the pattern and remains as Defence Secretary, a position he's held since 2019. Creating cabinets and appointing their support staff can take days, but Truss has to hit the ground running. She has her fans, but also her critics.
Why am I here is because I support Liz Truss and I think that she'll be a great Prime Minister for our country.
I think that the new Prime Minister will in many ways disappoint the country. I don't think she's going to be the right fit for the job. She used to be a Liberal Democrat, now she's not. She used to be a Remainer, now she's not.
Typically for London, it rained on Truss's parade for her first day in the job, but that's the least of her problems as she now gets down to work.
You're watching Euronews Now. Stay with us, there's plenty more coming up after a short break.